AITA for refusing to give my stepdaughter $7,000 and being falsely accused as a result? My name is Derek. I'm 46 years old, and life was finally starting to get back on track after a few complicated years. My first marriage ended about 10 years ago. Rebecca and I were together for 12 years. But if I'm being honest, we worked better as friends than as husband and wife. We got married too young, without a clear idea of what we wanted from life, and over time, we realized we were just coexisting. There were no big fights or drama. We simply drifted apart gradually. My second wife, Elena, who is 43, came into my life when I wasn't looking for anything serious. We met at a community event to raise funds and rebuild homes after a flood devastated our town. I was helping coordinate volunteers, and she was in charge of an arts and crafts station for kids. Elena had a vibrant and contagious energy that was impossible to ignore. She was a single mother to Sienna, who was 16 at the time, and she worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. She taught art classes during the day and waited tables at a local restaurant at night. Sienna's father had been out of the picture for a long time. According to Elena, he left when the girl was just 2 years old. He started a new family in Texas and never looked back. No child support, no visits, just silence. I remember thinking about the strength Elena must have had to hold everything together on her own. We started dating shortly after that event and connected immediately. We shared similar tastes in music, hiking, and even those same old, cheesy movies we had both seen countless times. After almost a year together, I proposed. It just felt right. When Elena and Sienna moved into my house, everything seemed to fall perfectly into place. Thanks to my job as a construction project manager, Elena was able to quit her second job at the restaurant and finally breathe a little. Sienna also seemed to adapt without any problems. She even enthusiastically participated in the wedding planning, choosing decorations and talking about how happy she was to have a real family again. My house isn't luxurious, but it's mine. I bought it when I was 30 after years of saving and some smart investments. It has 3 bedrooms, a decent yard, and is in a good neighborhood. It felt like the ideal place to start this new chapter together. With less exhaustion, Elena refocused on her art. We had family dinners, movie nights, and so on. I felt like I was finally building the life I had always wanted. However, looking back, I realize I ignored several red flags. Sienna was always a bit demanding. At first, it was minor things. She would ask for extra money for school supplies and come home with an expensive backpack that was more of a fashion statement than something practical. Or she would claim she needed new clothes for a school event and show up with designer garments, tags still on. Elena used to brush it off, saying Sienna had been through a lot growing up without her father. Another red flag I overlooked was the way Elena handled money. When we met, she was drowning in debt from trying to give Sienna everything she asked for. She carried a huge amount of guilt for raising her alone, and that was directly reflected in how she parented. If Sienna wanted the latest iPhone, Elena would find a way to get it, even if it meant falling behind on bills. If she asked for expensive makeup, Elena would pick up extra shifts to pay for it. I thought I could help them break that cycle. I helped Elena create a budget, manage her debts, and even started saving for Sienna's college fund. But the more I tried to set boundaries, the more Elena ended up giving in. I didn't understand it at the time, but Sienna had her mother completely wrapped around her little finger. Still, it wasn't all bad in the beginning. There were moments when I truly felt like we were a family. Unfortunately, those moments became increasingly brief. Sienna's demanding behavior continued, and Elena's habit of justifying it only made the situation worse. Despite everything, I thought we could handle it. I was convinced that with enough patience and understanding, anything could be overcome. Today, looking back, I see how naive I was. I didn't know it then, but Sienna wasn't just a spoiled teenager. She was an expert manipulator. And as much as I wanted to believe Elena had my back, the reality was she would always put Sienna first, no matter what. Of course, I wasn't aware of that yet. At that point, I was just a man trying to build a life with the woman I loved, completely oblivious to the storm that was brewing. By now, you can probably guess that the honeymoon phase didn't last very long. At first, I thought Sienna was simply adjusting to the new family dynamic, but I was very wrong. Her true colors began to show, and believe me, they were not pleasant. The first major conflict came about 2 months after they moved in. Sienna announced she needed to redecorate her room. And mind you, her room was already perfectly equipped with a queen-sized bed, a desk, and a closet, all in good condition. But according to her, none of it matched her aesthetic vision. She presented Elena and me with a list of demands: a new bed frame, designer wallpaper, and LED lights she had seen on TikTok. The total cost was around $2,000. Elena hesitated at first, but Sienna did what she does best: crocodile tears, reproaches, and the classic, "You don't care about my happiness." I tried to stand firm and proposed that she could redecorate only if she saved up and contributed part of the money, but Elena ended up caving. "It's just her room, Derek. It's her space," she said, as if that justified spending a fortune on a whim. Sienna barely lifted a finger during the redecoration. She acted like a supervisor, giving orders while I painted the walls and assembled the new furniture. And once it was all done, she hardly used the room. Within a few weeks, she was already talking about wanting to change it again. Then came the study abroad program disaster. One day, she came home announcing that her school was offering a summer course in Paris and that, of course, she had to go. She didn't even phrase it as a question. She just assumed we would foot the bill. When I saw the costs, my jaw almost hit the floor. Between tuition, airfare, and living expenses, the total exceeded $10,000. I said no immediately. I mean, come on, we weren't swimming in money. And it wasn't as if Sienna was some a student who was academically crushing it. But Elena started with the usual excuses. "She's young, Derek. This could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." Sienna, of course, took that as her cue to ramp up the emotional blackmail. "If my dad were here, he would let me go," which was absurd coming from someone whose father hadn't even sent her a birthday card in years. Since I didn't give in, Sienna punished us with the silent treatment for weeks. She would come home from school, slam her bedroom door, and refuse to speak to either of us. It was like living with a teenage dictator. Elena was on edge all the time, trying to keep the peace at all costs, while I did my best to ignore the toxic atmosphere. Next was the car. For her 17th birthday, Sienna got her first car, a simple, reliable used sedan. I thought it was more than generous, especially since I paid for half of it. However, in less than 6 months, she completely wrecked it. She ran a stop sign, got into a crash, and the car was totaled. Instead of being grateful she wasn't hurt, she started dropping hints about how the next car should be a cooler one. Elena incredibly considered it, but that's where I put my foot down. I remember my ex-wife, Rebecca, warned me about all of this. We'd talk on the phone every couple of months, and she always asked how things were going with Elena and Sienna. When I mentioned the accident, she just said, "Be careful, Derek. Kids like that don't lose that sense of entitlement overnight." I ignored it at the time. I thought Rebecca was just being overly protective of me. But God, how I wish I had listened to her. And I can't forget the dog. One day, Sienna decided she wanted a dog. Not just any dog, of course, but a purebred golden retriever puppy she had found online for $3,500. I love dogs. But let's be realistic, Elena and I worked full-time, and Sienna wasn't exactly known for her responsibility. I told her no. Elena also said no, but Sienna wouldn't take no for an answer. She started showing us videos of sad dogs in shelters, making exaggerated speeches and dramatic scenes about how she would be the perfect mom to a puppy. And then it happened. One day, Elena and I came home from work to find a puppy running all over the house. It turned out Sienna had convinced a friend's mother to pay for the dog up front with the promise that she would pay her back soon. Elena was furious for a few minutes. Then came the tears, the victim face, and Elena folded, as always. "We'll figure it out," she said. And in the end, as expected, I ended up paying for everything: food, vet bills, vaccinations, training classes, while Sienna barely ever walked him. Then came her modeling phase. Suddenly, Sienna decided she wanted to be a model and convinced Elena to hire a photographer for a professional portfolio session. And of course, it couldn't be a local photographer or someone affordable, right? She wanted the best of the best, someone with thousands of Instagram followers and a name that looked impressive. It cost over $1,500. And you know what the worst part was? The photo shoot was a disaster. Sienna complained the whole time about the lighting, the angles, the outfits, and when they showed her the unedited photos, she sulked because she didn't look perfect. Elena tried to calm her down. The photos will look much better once they're edited, but Sienna wouldn't have it. She demanded we book a second session to redo everything from scratch. I shut that idea down immediately, and of course, that made me the villain again. What irritated me the most, however, wasn't the money. It was how Sienna treated Elena. She didn't just manipulate her. She disrespected her constantly. She would roll her eyes whenever Elena asked her to help with something around the house, as if any basic chore was beneath her. Once, Elena asked her to load the dishwasher, and Sienna retorted, "You've got some nerve. Why don't you do it? You're better at that kind of thing." Elena laughed, pretending it didn't bother her, but I saw it. It hurt her. And let's not even talk about the emergencies. Every few weeks, she would come up with a new crisis that coincidentally required money immediately. Her laptop broke, her phone screen shattered, the car needed new tires. It was always something. And every time, Elena would dip into our savings to bail her out. At one point, I tried to implement a system where Sienna had to pay us back for these emergencies, but it never worked. Elena was too much of a pushover, and Sienna knew exactly how to exploit that. I started to feel like I was living with a con artist. Sienna wasn't just demanding, she was calculating. She knew exactly how to pit Elena against me and always found a way to get what she wanted. By the time she turned 20, it was clear she had no intention of growing up. She dropped out of community college after just one semester, saying it wasn't her thing. She refused to get a part-time job because, according to her, it would damage her personal brand. And yet, she constantly complained about how unfair it was that her friends were traveling and buying expensive things while she was stuck at home. I tried talking to Elena, really talking, but there was always an excuse ready. She's just finding herself. She'll grow out of it. Deep down, I think Elena knew Sienna wasn't going to change. She just didn't know how to face it. By then, I was losing my patience. I loved Elena, but Sienna made living together unbearable. I felt like I was living in a house where I was always in the minority, always the bad guy. And the worst part was, I hadn't yet seen how far Sienna was willing to go. It all started one Sunday afternoon. I was in my office catching up on some backlogged work when Sienna knocked on the door. That itself was strange. She usually just walked in without asking. She appeared holding her phone as if it were a trophy and started telling me about an incredible opportunity. "I've been doing some research," she said, in the tone of someone presenting a thesis. "I want to launch my own skincare line. Everyone is into clean beauty right now. I already have the name, the logo. I just need the startup capital to get it off the ground." I leaned back in my chair, skeptical from the first second. "How much money are we talking about?" She smiled as if she had just won the lottery. "Only $7,000. That covers product samples, packaging, and the website. I've already talked to a supplier, and they're ready to work with me as soon as I send the payment." I looked at her, waiting for something more. A business plan, a timeline, projections, market research, any sign that this wasn't just a whim. But no, she just stood there, clearly expecting me to say yes immediately. "Do you have any of this in writing? A plan, even a basic one?" I asked. Sienna rolled her eyes. "Derek, it's not that complicated. It's skincare, everyone buys it. I've seen people go viral overnight just on TikTok. I already have the vision. I just need the funds." I sighed. "Sienna, $7,000 is not a small amount of money. Starting a business requires more than just an idea and a social media account. Have you even thought about how much time and effort this involves?" Her expression hardened instantly. "Why do you always have to make everything so difficult? You just don't believe in me. If I were your real daughter, you would support me." There it was again, the guilt trip. She knew exactly which buttons to push, but this time, I didn't give in. "Sienna, this isn't about not believing in you. It's about being realistic. Starting a business is a huge commitment, and you have neither the experience nor a plan to back it up. I'm not going to hand over $7,000 just because you have a vision." She stormed out, muttering something about how I was a dream killer. I thought that would be the end of it. I should have known better. Later that night, Elena approached me with a troubled expression. She sat down next to me on the couch. "Sienna told me about her business idea," she began. "I think it's good that she's excited about something." I put my face in my hands. "Elena, she's not excited about anything that doesn't involve spending other people's money. She has no plan, no experience, nothing. It's just another whim." Elena bit her lip, searching for the right words. "I know it seems that way, But maybe this could be a turning point for her. If we give her the resources, maybe she'll finally take responsibility for something. She's 20 years old, I said, my voice louder than I intended. She dropped out of school, refuses to work, and spends half her day scrolling on Instagram. What about any of that makes you think she's ready to run a business? Elena didn't answer, just sighed. I'll talk to her. The next morning, I heard them arguing in the kitchen. Sienna was beside herself. Why do you always take his side? She screamed. It's like you don't care about my future. Of course I care, Elena replied, trying to stay calm. But $7,000 is a lot of money, and you don't have anything concrete to show for it yet. Maybe you could start small, get a part-time job, save up. Oh, so now I'm not good enough to follow my dreams because I don't have a job? Sienna interrupted. Do you hear yourself? You're supposed to be my mom, but you treat me like a failure. I walked into the kitchen. I wasn't going to let Elena handle this alone. Sienna, nobody is saying you can't have dreams. What we're saying is that you need to be realistic and work for them like everyone else. She looked at me as if I had just insulted her entire existence. You're the reason she's not supporting me. You've been against me from day one. And with that, she stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The tension hung in the air all week. Sienna barely spoke to us, moving through the house like a ghost. Elena was caught in the middle, torn between supporting me and not wanting to provoke her daughter. I thought we had hit rock bottom. I was wrong. One evening, Elena walked into the living room with an expression I will never forget. We need to talk, she said, sitting down across from me. Okay, I replied cautiously. It's about Sienna, she continued, her voice trembling. She told me something, and I don't even know how to process it. I felt my stomach drop. What did she tell you? Elena took a deep breath before speaking. She says you've been behaving inappropriately with her, that you've crossed a line when I'm not home. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't even process the words that had just come out of her mouth. What? She says you've made her feel uncomfortable, she continued. That you follow her around the house and try to be alone with her. I felt like the world was crashing down on me. Elena, that's insane, I said, my voice shaking. I have never done anything like that. You know me. You know I would never. She seems really scared, Derek, she interrupted. I didn't know what to say for a second. Then it hit me. She's lying, I replied firmly. Think about it. This all started right after I refused to give her the money. She's trying to manipulate you. Elena looked torn, trapped between wanting to believe me and not being able to ignore what Sienna had said. Why would she lie about something so serious? She asked. Because she knows you'll believe her, I answered, not softening the blow. She's been manipulating us for years, and you've always let her. Elena flinched at my words, but I didn't care anymore. I was too hurt, too angry. The very fact that she would even consider the accusation felt like a betrayal. I spent the rest of the night replaying the conversation over and over, trying to understand how we had gotten to this point. Sienna had crossed a line I never imagined she would cross, and Elena's doubt, her hesitation to defend me, made me feel like I was sinking in quicksand. The next day, I tried to show her proof, security camera footage, my work schedules, anything to demonstrate I wasn't even home at the time Sienna claimed these incidents occurred. But Elena wasn't convinced. You could have deleted the recordings, she said softly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I had married, the woman who claimed to know me, was willing to believe a lie over years of shared life and trust. Meanwhile, Sienna played her victim role to perfection. She would flinch when I entered a room. She cried in front of Elena, saying she was scared. And when Elena wasn't looking, she would shoot me these self-satisfied smirks, as if she knew exactly what she was doing. That's when my life began to fall apart. I understood I was facing the fight of my life. This was no longer about a spoiled young woman. I was dealing with someone capable of destroying me without remorse to get her way. The first thing I did was call a lawyer. I wasn't going to wait for the situation to spiral even further out of control. The lawyer I found was direct, experienced, and didn't sugarcoat reality. False accusations are extremely delicate, he told me in our first meeting. Public opinion doesn't wait for proof, and if this escalates, it can ruin your life even if you're innocent. We need to build a solid case. He explained the steps to take. First, gather all possible evidence. Second, document absolutely everything. Texts, calls, interactions. And third, most importantly, Do not confront Sienna directly. He told me people like her thrive on drama, and any emotional reaction could be used against me. I started by reviewing my security camera footage. I had cameras in the common areas and outside the house, installed years ago after a series of neighborhood break-ins. I watched hours and hours of recordings, looking for anything that contradicted the accusations, and I found it. There were countless clips of Sienna behaving completely normally when she thought no one was watching. In one clip, Sienna was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone and laughing, just minutes after what was supposedly a traumatic interaction with me. I compiled all the footage and gave it to my lawyer. "This is good," he said, nodding as he reviewed the videos. "It shows she's not afraid of you as she claims, but we'll need more." Then I reviewed my phone records. Every text, every call, and every email related to Sienna went into a folder. Most were messages from AITA, updating me on Sienna's new demands or asking me to just give in this one time. However, I also found some messages sent directly by Sienna, passive-aggressive comments about how easy it must be to have money and not worry about anyone else. My lawyer said they helped establish a pattern but weren't enough on their own. The next step was to talk to the neighbors. If anyone had noticed strange behavior, I needed to know. Mrs. Lane, who lives next door, was more than cooperative. "I've been meaning to say something for a while, Derek," she confessed as soon as I opened the door. "That girl throws parties while you two are at work. I've had to call the police twice for the noise." She gave me a written statement with dates and times. Mr. Patel from across the street also helped. He had security cameras, and when I asked if they had caught anything unusual, he sent me several clips. In one, Sienna was sunbathing in the front yard on the same day. She claimed to be too scared to leave her room. In another, she was seen sneaking a boy in through a side window in the middle of the night. But the most damning evidence came from where I least expected it, her own Instagram account. It hadn't occurred to me to check it before, but when I did, I found a gold mine of contradictions. Smiling selfies in her room with captions like, "Chilling at home, living my best life," posted on the very day she claimed to feel harassed. Photos from parties, trips to the mall, even one at a nail salon, bragging about how pampered she was. I took screenshots of everything and added them to the ever-growing file. Then, my lawyer suggested going a step further. "If you're comfortable with it, we can install voice-activated recorders in the house," he said. "It's legal since the property is yours, and it could give us key insights into what she says when she thinks no one is listening." I hesitated at first. It felt invasive, even though I knew he was right. But after everything Sienna had already done, I understood I couldn't afford to be cautious. I installed recorders in the common areas, the kitchen, the living room, and the hallway outside her room. They didn't take long to yield results. Within days, I had recordings of Sienna talking to her friends about her plan. In one, she was laughing, saying, "Mom always believes me. Derek doesn't stand a chance." In another, she bragged about how she could cry on command to convince AITA she was terrified. But the most devastating recording was a phone call with a friend. Her voice was casual, almost bored. "I made it up," she admitted. "He's being a jerk about the money, so I had to do something. Mom's going to take my side no matter what." When I played that recording for my lawyer, he smiled for the first time since we started working together. "This is it," he said. "This is the kind of evidence that holds up in court." He warned me not to confront Sienna or AITA yet. "Let's build the strongest possible case before you make any moves," he said. "We have to be prepared for anything they try to throw at you." Over the following weeks, I dedicated myself to collecting evidence. Every mistake Sienna made was documented. I began to feel like a detective in my own home, always on alert, waiting for the next piece of the puzzle to fall into place. AITA, meanwhile, suspected nothing. She continued to shield Sienna from me, doing everything she could to defend her. I tried talking to her a couple of times, but we always ended up in the same argument. Why would she lie about something like that? She would repeat over and over, as if saying it enough times would make it true. I started to feel like I was living in a twisted reality. I, who had done everything to support this family, was being treated like a criminal in my own house. Still, I knew I couldn't let my emotions take over. The stakes were too high. My reputation, my career, my entire future depended on proving the truth, and I was determined to do it, no matter the cost. Deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before Sienna made a mistake she couldn't come back from. That moment arrived one Saturday morning. Elena had gone to the grocery store, leaving us alone in the house. I was in my office trying to work when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Something inside me told me to start recording on my phone. Sienna walked in without knocking. She didn't look upset or angry, just smug, as if she had the upper hand. "We need to talk," she said, crossing her arms. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my face neutral. "Fine. What's on your mind?" She got straight to the point. "I'm giving you one last chance to fix this. If you give me $50,000, I'll tell Mom I made everything up. I'll apologize and we'll move on. No one else has to know." $50,000. She wasn't even pretending it was about her business anymore. This was pure blackmail. "And if I say no?" I asked calmly. Sienna smiled condescendingly. "Then I go public. I go to the police, I post my story online, and I contact every charity you work with. I've already written out how you've been manipulating me since I was a teenager. It will destroy you, Derek, even if you're innocent. No one will believe you over me." She leaned back in the chair, pleased with herself. I felt sick. I wanted to scream at her, to throw her out of my house right then and there, but I knew I had to keep a cool head. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider her proposal. "That's a lot of money, Sienna. I need time to think about it." She shrugged. "Don't take too long. My patience is wearing thin." She stood up and left the room, leaving me there, paralyzed. I waited to hear her door close before I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking as I replayed the audio, listening to her lay out her plan in crystal clear detail. I sent the file to my lawyer immediately. He called me within minutes. "This is it," he said. "She's admitted everything. The lies, the blackmail. You're in the clear." But we weren't done yet. My lawyer suggested confronting Sienna and Elena at the same time, with him present via video call to prevent any manipulation or backtracking. That afternoon, Elena came home, oblivious. I asked her to sit down in the living room, telling her we needed to talk about something important. Sienna appeared a few minutes later. "What's going on?" Elena asked, looking nervously between us. "It's about the truth," I replied, pulling out my phone. "Sienna, I think it's time you told your mother what's really been happening." Sienna's smirk faltered for just a second before she composed herself. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said with fake innocence. I didn't respond. I connected my phone to the television and pressed play. The first recording filled the room. Sienna bragging to her friend about how easy it was to manipulate Elena. Elena's face turned pale as she heard her daughter's laughter. Then came the second audio, where Sienna admitted to making everything up because I wouldn't give her money. Elena burst into tears, covering her mouth with her hands. "Mom, he's lying. He edited it all." Sienna screamed, but panic was already seeping into her voice. I held up my phone and showed her the files with the timestamps visible. "They're raw recordings, Sienna, unedited. Stop lying." Then I played the final recording, the one from that very morning, where she tried to blackmail me for $50,000. The room fell into absolute silence. Elena looked like she was about to be sick. Sienna, on the other hand, was frozen, her confident facade completely crumbled. When the audio ended, I turned to Elena. "Do you believe me now?" At first, she didn't answer, just stared at her daughter, tears streaming down her face. "Is it true?" she finally asked, her voice broken. Sienna jumped to her feet, desperate. "Mom, he's twisting everything. He forced me to say those things." "Stop," Elena interrupted her. "Just stop." Sienna tried to keep talking, but Elena shook her head, raising her voice. "I believed you. I turned against my husband because I thought you were telling the truth, and this whole time you were lying." Sienna's mask completely shattered. The panic transformed into rage. "You always take his side," she screamed. "You're a terrible mother, and he's a control freak who deserves everything I said about him." Elena collapsed, sobbing into her hands, as Sienna stormed off to her room. I called my lawyer and told him what happened. In less than an hour, the eviction notices were printed and ready. Sienna was the first to go, still shouting that we had ruined her life. She packed a few bags and left for a friend's house. Elena begged me for another chance. She said she never imagined Sienna would go this far, that she was only trying to protect her. I shook my head. "You believe the worst of me without a single piece of proof, Elena. I don't think I can come back from that." She moved out the next day, taking only her essentials, and leaving the rest for movers. I changed the locks immediately and installed additional security measures. As expected, Sienna tried to spin the story. A few days later, she posted a long, dramatic account on Instagram, painting herself as a survivor forced to flee a toxic home. She claimed I was abusive, that Elena had betrayed her, and that she was starting from scratch to heal. She even started a GoFundMe, citing therapy expenses and needing financial help to rebuild her life. The problem for Sienna was that she had underestimated how much evidence existed against her. My lawyers sent cease and desist letters to her, to the friends who were spreading her posts, and even to the GoFundMe platform itself. Attached were all the recordings, screenshots, and documents we had gathered. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. An old friend of Sienna's, someone she had apparently scammed before, posted screenshots of texts where Sienna bragged about making up the whole story to get money from me. Shortly after, another friend, the same one from the recorded calls, came forward and confirmed everything. With all that evidence on the table, it became clear we couldn't just react, while Sienna continued trying to build her own narrative on social media and create confusion. So, using every piece of proof we had, my lawyer and I made a definitive decision: move forward with a civil lawsuit and put that liar in front of a judge where there would be no more room for manipulation or convenient versions of the story. Weeks later, the process was formally in the hands of the judicial system. The lawsuit detailed defamation, false accusations, and extortion, backed by a mountain of evidence. Recordings where Sienna admitted to making it all up, the explicit blackmail attempt, screenshots of her messages, and sworn statements from two of her own friends, who confirmed she bragged about fabricating the story to get money from me. Even before the hearings began, her story started to crumble under the weight of the facts. On the day of the trial, we arrived at the courthouse first, calm and confident, knowing the truth was documented from start to finish. Sienna appeared later, accompanied by a lawyer who was not prepared for a case like this. He was young, inexperienced in complex litigation, and his defense was based more on excuses than facts. That Sienna was confused, that she felt pressured, that she had misinterpreted situations. He even implied that everything should be viewed with sensitivity because she was a young woman. But the judge didn't buy any of it. With the evidence on the table, he made it clear that gender did not nullify responsibility and that deliberately lying to extort had consequences. The defense asked to dismiss or reduce the case. The judge rejected it without hesitation. The ruling was decisive. Sienna was found civilly liable and ordered to pay $15,000 in damages for reputational harm, legal costs, and emotional distress. It wasn't an exaggerated figure, but it was high enough to mark her for years. The sentence included automatic garnishments on future income. Any job, collaboration, or attempt to monetize her image would be tied to that debt. There was no jail time, but something worse for someone like her: a legally established truth and a financial burden impossible to escape. Elena was present throughout the trial. She didn't testify, didn't argue, didn't defend anyone. She sat in the back of the courtroom with a lost look and eyes swollen from crying, listening as her own daughter's accusations were dismantled, point by point. When the judge read the sentence, she lowered her head and broke down in silence. The victim image Sienna had so carefully constructed collapsed after the trial. Her GoFundMe was shut down. Her social media accounts went private, and the few sponsorships she had managed to secure as an aspiring influencer disappeared immediately. The story of the trial spread quickly in our social circle, and suddenly, Sienna was left with very few people willing to defend her. As for Elena, she has kept a low profile. A few weeks after she left, she sent me a very long email apologizing. She admitted that deep down, she knew Sienna was lying but couldn't face that reality because it meant accepting she had failed as a mother. "I so badly wanted to believe she was still my little girl," she wrote. "I let that blind me to the person she has become." It was a sincere message. You could tell she was truly sorry, but for me, it was too little, too late. There's no coming back from a betrayal like that. I never replied. I heard through mutual friends that Elena moved back to her old neighborhood and got a job at a local art supply store. She still teaches classes at the community center, which I'm honestly happy for her about. But from what I've heard, she's struggling financially again, balancing accounts, paying bills, and trying to rebuild her life from scratch. And Sienna, well, let's just say karma is collecting with interest. Besides the blow to her reputation, she now carries a debt she'll have to pay for years. Between the damages and legal fees, she's tied to a financial obligation that constantly reminds her that her lies did not come free. After her social media implosion, she packed her bags and moved to Reno, Nevada, to live with other aspiring influencers. They share a tiny apartment, split expenses, and from what I've heard, it's nowhere near the glamorous life she imagined. Her attempts to grow her online presence again have gone nowhere, and the sponsorships simply never came back after everything that happened. The reality is, in addition to her failed attempts on social media, she has had to take part-time jobs just to support herself and keep paying off the debt. From what I've been told, she's not doing well. She's just scraping by, jumping from one job to another, and her situation is a far cry from the image she tried to sell. Her reputation, meanwhile, is practically buried. Rebuilding after a fall like that isn't easy, especially when there's proof involved. In the end, she had to learn the hard way that all actions have consequences. As for me, I focused on picking up the pieces. The first thing I did was finalize the divorce. My lawyer made sure the process was quick and straightforward. Elena had no claim to my house, and I had all the documentation proving I had covered most of the expenses during the marriage. In the end, she didn't even try to contest it. With that settled, I focused on rebuilding from the ground up. I started creating habits to help me heal and regain control of my life. Waking up early, going to the gym to release tension, watching my diet, and keeping my body and mind busy. I also threw myself into my work, taking on more projects and responsibilities, not just as a distraction, but as a way to grow professionally and trust myself again. At the same time, I narrowed my social circle to the people who truly mattered, those who were there when things got tough and didn't need explanations to stay. I discovered that peace largely comes from surrounding yourself with people who add to your life, who listen, and who don't disappear when you need them most. Over time, I've learned a lot from this disaster. I learned that trust is fragile, that some people can hide who they are for years, and that sometimes even the people you love most can break you in ways you never imagined. But I also learned something else. I'm stronger than I thought. Karma may have caught up with Sienna and Elena, but in its own way, it also gave me the chance to start over. Comment. After a story like this, I think it's important to talk about what we can take from it in a positive way. Setting boundaries isn't about pushing people away. It's about respecting yourself enough to protect your peace. True kindness can coexist with clear limits that define what is and isn't acceptable in your life. Ultimately, you are the primary guardian of your well-being and your reputation. Sometimes, choosing to heal means making difficult decisions that others may not understand at first. Your self-worth should never depend on someone else's approval or validation. The goal isn't just to be proven right, but to find your way back to inner calm. Learn to listen to your intuition when something feels wrong, because it rarely does without a reason. Remember to be kind to yourself throughout the process of rebuilding. You always deserve to live in a space of safety and respect. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.